Hear me okay? I have so my name's Charlotte. I'm from Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland, and I have English A, Spanish, Portuguese, and French C. Okay, I hope everyone can hear. Yes? Yeah, okay, excellent. Okay, I'm going to talk about Easter. So I think you may have seen in the Google Doc, I just mentioned that there were a few things which hopefully won't cause too many difficulties, but in fact, I think it's a fairly straightforward speech, but I think there's just a few things that I popped down there to do with the symbolism of Easter, spring equinox, the pagan fertility goddess of Eostre, and Lent, the Easter hare, the Easter bunny, a few more things like that, but nothing too complicated. Okay, if everyone's ready, shall I begin? Okay, I'm seeing a few nods. I'm going for it. Okay, excellent. Okay, so I'm going to start my speech now. Yesterday, many people around the world celebrated Easter, my family included. And after what was a fairly animated chocolate egg hunt around the living room, my daughter turned to me and she asked me, "Mummy, if Easter is about Jesus rising from the dead, how come an Easter bunny brings me chocolate eggs?" Which I thought was a very good question. And instead of giving her a piecemeal answer, I thought, why not look into this properly? So the first discovery I made was that a lot of Easter symbolism predates Christianity. In fact, many people claim that Easter has pagan roots, and it's certainly true that a lot of the symbolism of Easter revolves around the spring equinox, the return of the sun god, a rebirth of light, and an emergence from the dark winter. Indeed, a typical German tradition at Easter is the Easter bonfire. On the night of Easter Sunday, the Germans light big bonfires across the country to welcome the sun and the spring. Furthermore, if you look at the word Easter in itself, in English and in German, it appears to have pagan origins, according to several sources, including an English monk who lived in the late 7th and early 8th century, who claimed the word Easter is derived from the pagan fertility goddess named Eostre. However, we know that this is not the case for Romance languages such as French and Spanish, where the word for Easter is derived from the Greek and Latin Pascha. And here you can see a very clear link with the Jewish festival of Passover. The date when Easter is celebrated is also linked to Passover. As Jesus died during the Passover festival and his followers believed he was resurrected from the dead 3 days later, it was logical to commemorate these events around the same date. However, in 325 AD, the Emperor Constantine convened a meeting of Christian leaders, and these Christian leaders decided that Easter should be fixed on the first Sunday after the first full moon of the spring equinox. Once again, this refers back to paganism, with the date of Easter being governed by the phases of the moon. But why are eggs so important at Easter? Well, for Christians, the Easter egg is symbolic of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Painting Easter eggs is an especially beloved tradition in the Orthodox and Eastern Catholic churches, where the eggs are dyed red to represent the blood of Jesus Christ that was shed on the cross. The hard shell of the egg represents the sealed tomb of Christ, and cracking the shell represents Jesus' resurrection from the dead. Also, historically, Christians would abstain from eating eggs and meat during Lent. And Easter, in fact, was the first chance to eat eggs again after a long period of abstinence. Nowadays, Easter egg hunts and egg rolling are two popular egg-related traditions. An egg hunt, as you know, involves hiding eggs outside for children to run around and find on Easter morning. However, if you're in quarantine, like this year, your living room and any window boxes just have to make do. Eggs are rolled as a symbolic reenactment of the rolling away of the stone from Christ's tomb. And in the United States, they have an annual event, the Easter egg roll, which is held on the White House lawn. So what about rabbits and baby chicks, I hear you ask? Well, going back to our pagan roots once again, in spring we start to see plants and trees growing that have been dormant over winter, as well as the birth of new life in the animal world. But the popularity of Easter chicks and the Easter bunny also relates to an important cultural shift that we saw in society. From the 17th century onwards, there was an increasing recognition of childhood as the time of life that should be joyous and not simply preparation for adulthood. This discovery of childhood, if you like, had profound effects on how Easter was celebrated. It was also during the 17th century that a German tradition of an Easter hare bringing eggs to good children came to be known. And hares and rabbits have a long association with spring because of their amazing powers of fertility. And in fact, they were the symbol for the pagan fertility goddess Eostre that I mentioned earlier. In my opinion, a lot of the fun things about Easter are pagan. And we see reminders of the holiday's very ancient origins outside the Christian tradition, even with the baking of cakes. I didn't know this, but I found out that the early church clergy tried to put a stop to sacred cakes being baked at Easter. But in the end, in the face of defiant cake baking pagan women, they gave up and blessed the cake instead. I think we could safely say then that Easter is both a pagan and a Christian festival, which is celebrated with cards, gifts, and novelty Easter products, because it's fun and because the ancient symbolism still works. Many of us who live in the dark north still feel the relief to see the first sunbeams of spring, the joy of seeing the buds of crocuses, daffodils, and green shoots emerging from the cold earth. And what better way to celebrate than to bite the head off a chocolate bunny or to help yourself to a hefty slice of pagan simnel cake.